Joining us now, Dr. Carol Swain. You know Dr. Swain, she's been on our show before, longtime college professor at Vanderbilt University, a very conservative political writer, author, and activist, and she's with us now from Virginia. Hey, Carol, great to have you with us.
Good morning, John. You're awfully lively today, but I guess that's every day.
It's an everyday occurrence. My trip to Tennessee for 3 days was just stunning because I stayed in Nashville, which is in Davidson County, which was locked down. And to go do anything, I had to drive or take Uber 3 miles across the Davidson County line into, I guess that's Williamson County. And then when I'm in Williamson County, I can do whatever I want. But then I have to sneak back in to Davidson County, like put a blanket over my head to get back in, like I'm a common criminal. How do you figure this?
We're still partially locked down, and so some of the restaurants downtown can be open with social distancing, but no live music. And so in Music City, we don't have music.
No, what is okay? So we got the same thing in Virginia, Dr. Swain, with the beaches. Okay, no, you can go to the beach, but you can't put a radio on and play music. And now in the Music City in Nashville, I'm a Titans fan, so I go there for a couple of home games this season, and I used to live there, as you know. So I go to Nashville, and so you go to Nashville, and you can't play music. What does music have to do with this virus?
Downtown Nashville just to eat.
What does music have to do with COVID-19?
It has nothing to do with COVID-19, and I think the overreaction of the Democratic, mostly Democratic, not all, mayors and governors, that gives Republicans and conservatives real ammunition because we can remind people forever of all the things that were done to them during the lockdown and how irrational it all was.
You know, Dr. Swain, you just had it. I think there's two things here. You're onto both of them. Number one is the real reason they don't want music is they want to keep people depressed, down, somber, and hopeless till they get to November. Because if you're down, depressed, and hopeless, you're not going to vote for the incumbent president, right? They know that. All the polling shows that. So you can't have any fun. If you have fun, you might actually vote for Trump. So they just want to keep you down and scared, right? So they can blame the whole thing on him and put Biden in. But the second thing, which you just nailed, is you agree with me that there is going to be a major pushback to this and a political reckoning come November, right?
Yes, and I can tell you that I see fewer masks. At one time, we were all wearing them. And now I just see maybe about half the people wearing the mask. And we're on to what for one thing, the American people know the science better than their leaders do. And I think that it's going to be very hard to control people who have information.
Let's take Virginia, and I know you want to talk about Virginia a little bit because you spend a lot of time here. Let's take the edict from the governor that says you can't play music or drink on the beach. Yet, if you go off the beach and onto the boardwalk, you can eat outside and drink yourself to death in any of the outside bars there, right? Sit at the table outside. So 30 feet from the beach, you can drink and they all play music, but you can't bring the music or the beer onto the beach. Like, what is the logic, Dr. Swain, behind that?
It sounds to me that he got with the business leaders that have their businesses on the boardwalk, and they helped him write that policy. It benefits them. It doesn't benefit the consumers.
I know, right? Carol Swain, Dr. Swain, give us an analysis of this, looking at it from your perspective. You taught law at Vanderbilt University. What do you think is the objective now of these Democrats? Where do you think this is headed?
I mean, you said it in your opening analysis. It's all about the November elections. The political science research shows that when the economy has a downturn, the people are likely to hold the incumbent president, his administration, accountable. So if they can keep people in economic distress and uncertainty, they believe it will benefit them. The other thing is they don't want to open up because their dream is to have voting by mail. And if the country returns to normal, there's no way that they can continue to push that.
Earlier last week, at the end of last week, the Legislative Black Caucus in Virginia sent a letter to Governor Northam urging him not to open up Virginia, to stall it for, I guess, several more weeks, a month, whatever. And they said that African Americans and people of color were being used as economic guinea pigs, and they referenced the eugenics of the 1920s and Tuskegee and horrible things like that. You're an African American. What was your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, there are a lot of things going on. In Nashville, they were doing some mandatory testing. Now they're in all the housing projects with the National Guard, and they're saying it's not mandatory, but they're trying to test the residents in the housing projects. If they test positive, their information is turned over to the police and to the contact tracers, and they're checking on people to make sure that the people that test positive, anyone they've been around, that they quarantine themselves. And if you're not quarantined, the police can arrest you. And so I think that's fraught with a lot of difficulties for minorities. And minorities complained, and the statistics showed that they were the most vulnerable. More of them were dying from the disease for all sorts of reasons. I think that any vaccine that they have, if it were to be mandatory, it will start in the minority communities, and it's fraught with all kinds of potential, for harm and for allegations of racism, because we know a lot of times the vaccines, especially those that are rushed, that they have side effects that are unpredictable. So in some ways, I can understand the suspicion, but the complaint was that the virus was racist. It was hurting minorities more than blacks. And then the reaction from the government is, okay, we will focus on those communities. So they have set up camp, at least in Nashville and parts of Tennessee, in the housing projects. And that brings in the police, it brings in the National Guard, and it brings in all kinds of potential problems.
We're with Dr. Carol Miller Swain. She is a former political science and law professor at Vanderbilt University in Nashville. She's got Virginia ties. She went to Roanoke College, Virginia Tech, also went to the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. There she got her doctorate. She's also went to Yale, and she's taught at both Princeton and Vanderbilt. She was born in Bedford, Virginia, one of 12 children. Her father dropped out of school in the 3rd grade. Her mom dropped out in high school. Her stepfather would physically abuse her mom, Dorothy Henderson, who was disabled due to infantile paralysis. Swain grew up in poverty, living in a shack without running water, sharing 2 beds with her 11 siblings, the second of 12 children. She did not have shoes and missed school when it snowed, because obviously you can't walk in the snow and get frostbite. She didn't finish high school, dropping out in the 9th grade. She moved to Roanoke with her family in the 60s and appealed to a judge to be transferred to a foster home, which was denied. Swain instead lived with her grandmother in a trailer park. She got her GED, worked as a cashier at McDonald's, a door-to-door salesperson, an assistant in a retirement facility. She then went to Virginia Wesleyan Community College, then to Roanoke College, then to Virginia Tech, where she got her master's, then to UNC in Chapel Hill, where she got her doctorate. Yale got her MLS, and taught in Ivy League in Princeton and Vanderbilt, 2-storied postgraduate universities in the United States. She has 3 children now. Dr. Swain, that's quite a story. I don't think there's anybody that can hold a candle to you as far as your knowledge of what it means to be in a tough minority community. So when you said earlier that the contact tracers were going to affect minorities more, can you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, that has nothing to do with my background. I was raised in the country, so there's a difference between country poverty and urban poverty. And so I grew up, believing in the American dream and believing in America. But with these contact tracers, I don't think any of us, white or black, want our test information turned over to the police and want people, outsiders, knowing our personal health information, calling us or checking to see whether or not we are safely in our home. It's just not something that anyone would want. And I think in the minority communities, there's already a distrust of law enforcement and police. And if you think about immigrants and minorities, you do have people there that have criminal records. They may be various reasons they don't want the police in their lives. What the contact tracers and the turning over information to the police means is that fewer people will get tested unless you force them to get tested. And the information that initially came out of the testing in Nashville, and I actually saw a memorandum to the Housing Project. They said it was mandatory. And then when the media started pushing on it a little bit, they said it's voluntary. But just the fact that the police have set up in the minority communities along with the National Guard, I think it's very troubling for America as a whole.
So what you're saying is these contact tracers along with authority enforcement is going to force people to take a test even if they don't want to take one. I mean, isn't that a violation of every civil liberty we have?
They're saying now that the testing is voluntary, but initially they were being told in the projects that it was mandatory, and I believe some people were tested. I mean, it's just troubling for America that you would have anything that would, with the government that involved in your lives. So you test for a disease. If you have this disease, they want the names of anyone you've been around. Those people are expected to quarantine themselves. The contact tracers will monitor everyone, and if you don't answer your phone, then they come to the house to see if you're at the house. And I haven't figured out how they would know, because I could answer my phone from the mall. Unless they're getting information from the cell phone companies, I don't see how else they would know where you are.
I agree with you. I think this contact tracer situation, let's just call it that, which is in process. I mean, these people are hired. They're already started work. And if you start targeting certain people, I mean, if you target a minority community or target low-income housing, I mean, to me, that's no different than when police do racial profiling. I mean, it's no different. So
but the minorities asked for it. We asked for it, and here's how they did, is that there was a hue and cry a few weeks ago that minority communities were more vulnerable and that more people were dying and that they weren't getting testing. So all of a sudden the government said, okay, we'll test you first. And so that's why they've set up camp in the minority communities. And here in Tennessee, the Black Caucus has stepped forward and said that they don't want the information turned over to the police. And I personally, I live in a mixed race neighborhood. I don't want my personal information turned over to the police. I've never, been arrested or anything like that, but I don't like that invasion of privacy.
I don't care what community you're in. The concept of somebody banging on your door with a mask on and law enforcement behind them demanding anything of you in your home. You have to take a test. You have to test your children. In Washington State right now, what they're saying is if you have a family of three with one bathroom and somebody is sick, the other two have to go. Like, they can't stay there. So they're going to, forcibly now remove your spouse and child? I mean, it's just, this stuff is just, it's like I woke up in a bad dream. This could never happen in America, but we're allowing it to happen, and we're paying for it. It's not only are we allowing it to happen, we're paying for it.
I think down the road, the people that have invested a lot of money in the vaccine and the political forces, that the next step would be to force, to try to push mandatory vaccinations on people who want to participate in life normally. And so if they come up with a vaccine, they could easily say to fly, you have to show proof that you've had the vaccination. And for someone like me, I guess it'll mean that I'll never fly again, because I don't see myself taking any vaccination that's funded by Bill Gates or George Soros or any of those people that are globalists.
Well, I think you're spot on. Dr. Carol Swain, I really want to thank you for being with us. John Fredericks Radio Network.